Nick, it's great to see you. Thanks a lot for coming on my podcast. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Pete, and look, thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
No worries. I mean, I know you're a man in demand. I know you do loads of podcasts, so it's a real privilege to have me on the show. What I want to do is just really let the listeners learn from your years and years of experience in the field and some of the insights that you've got. So, thought it'd be good to just start with, who you are, how have you got to where you are now, and just give us a bit of your background.
So, my name's Nick Grantham. I am a strength and conditioning coach by trade. So, through formal qualification, sports science and psychology, and then exercise and nutrition science as an MSc. And then right at the beginning, I guess, of sports science support in the UK, following a fairly disastrous 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. Um, Government funding came on board, lottery funding, and I started working at Lily Shore Sports Injury and Human Performance Centre, and I was tasked with sports science provision for the British gymnastics team. Spent a number of years there, prepping athletes for Sydney 2000, and then moved across to England netball, where prepped them for Commonwealth Games in 2002 and World Championships in 2003, and then moved across to the English Institute of Sport. I think I was employee number 5. I'd done some
Nice.
consultancy work prior to that, but I was one of the OGs for the English Institute of Sport, based down in the West Midlands, lead practitioner for that region, really at the embryonic sort of stages of an institute-based support system. So that was a fantastic growth opportunity, working across multiple sports, a fantastic environment to develop. And then decided that I wanted to go out on my own when people didn't really do consultancy. It's a strange choice, possibly career suicide, but moved to the northeast with my family and set up myself as a consultant and worked across, again, a range of organisations, a range of high performance teams, prepping teams for London 2012, and then going into things like action sports and professional football. So again, a wide range of people, educational resources, books, lots of different things before finally winding up doing something I said I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go back into full-time employment, but I did. I went back into full-time employment and now working in professional football with a team in the Premier League.
Amazing. I mean, what a breadth and depth of experience. I mean, we've obviously crossed paths loads over the last 20 years or so, but you were probably around 10 years before that, which is just incredible. Sorry to give your age away, but no, I mean, incredible that you've worked across so many sports in so many different settings. So I guess as a leader in sports, what are some of the key moments that have sort of helped shape your leadership journey throughout that experience?
So it's prepping for this podcast has been really interesting. I always like to prep, and I didn't think I was going to have much to talk about, and didn't think I had any key moments. And then when you start going back, you go, actually, that was pretty pivotal. So I think one of the first things that will kind of bookend our conversation, I think, is I read just a number of months ago, one of IKEA's values was that leadership isn't a position, it's an action. And I was like, that's me, because I've not really held a traditional, typical leadership role. I've not been called a head of or a director of or anything else, but the actions have been there, the doing part has been there, certainly. So I think that will bookend our conversation. But coming back to your question about pivotal moments, I think the first one was really when I worked with England netball, and I sat down for a performance review with our performance director, and to date probably still one of the best performance directors I've ever worked with, Waimarana Amun. I'm going to butcher her surname, I always do, and I always apologise. But she was great. I sat with all these CPD projects that I wanted to do, and I wanted to go to these S&C conferences and all these things, and she said, no, I'm not going to sign off on any of those. You need to do a management course. And I was like, but I'm an S&C coach. And she's like, yeah, you're a good S&C coach, which is why we employed you, but you need to manage a multidisciplinary team. You need to work with people spread out across the UK. So you need to become a good manager. So that was my first introduction to. I went to Open University, did a year-long certificate in management, which was a real eye-opener. So I think that was pivotal. Then my time at the English Institute of Sport, in the formative years, the regional S&C leads, we all dealt with a certain situation very poorly, given our inexperience. There was one particular moment that was a catalyst, and as a result of that poor handling by us, the senior management team said, you are all going on a management course. So we were sent, it felt like a punishment, it probably was, on a 6-day management course. And again, I was quite reluctant to go on that, but actually that was again really insightful and useful, and built on the work that I'd done at the Open University. And then fast forward sort of 10 years or so, 2012, 2013, one of the guys that used to work for me, Mark Jarvis, one of the things you do when you build teams is don't build them sort of like in your versions of you. You look for people that have got different qualities, and Mark came in like a real scientific, analytical, and strategic brain. And it was no surprise that his career trajectory saw him move into those more sort of strategic pathways. And I reached out to Mark, having been a former staff member of mine, and saying, oh, I need you to mentor me and give me some advice and help on this whole leadership picture. And one of the first things he got me to do was talk about this burning platform concept of, okay, well, if you want to shift into this leadership type space, what have you got to change? This is what you're currently doing. The platform's on fire. What's it going to look like, the new platform? And interestingly, again, Pete, I went back just this morning and looked at the documents that I wrote down from that meeting in around 2011, and all the things that I said I wanted my life kind of to look like, and the things that would make me happy, like I've got them. So it's and I'm not going to tick those off every year. It's just it has happened over time. So Mark's been really pivotal, and he's always been someone I can pick up the phone to. And then most recently, like this year, I'm currently on a level 7 apprenticeship strategic leadership course, and my tutor Roz is fantastic, and she does not let me off the hook. And one of our conversations really early on, where I was struggling with change management and I was trying to get people to change. I wanted to work a certain way and adhere to my values, and all of the feedback I was getting, I just said, well, Roz, it's just like I'm the one that has to change. Why have I got to change? And she just looked at me and went, that's exactly what it is. You have to change. You have to flex and adapt your style, because it's not working for you, is it? You're having conflicts and you're having challenges with people. And she's like, you have to adapt. That's the sign of a really good leader. And that was kind of my sort of sit up and take note, and right, I've been told. So yeah, those have been some really key points all the way through my career.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find that interesting. There's so much there. Obviously, you talked early on about doing courses, being sent on courses, choosing to do courses, and then obviously now you've chosen this level 7 leadership course. So there's an element of kind of educating yourself as well. But what I really liked was the humility you've shown to actually reach out to friends and ask for help. Like with Mark Jarvis, you said, you tap him up from time to time, you sat down with him, you spent time with him. And I think that takes a lot to be able to go to somebody and do that. And I think that's a real important lesson for our listeners to know that, it's okay to go to, well, it's good to go to people, it's good to ask for help, but you need to have that level of self-awareness and humility to reach out to people.
I've got a network now, increasingly, because I am slightly more experienced.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding now is my people that I've mentored and helped along the way and who have worked for me are now in these positions, and I'm like, do you know what? Actually, I can learn a lot from you now. So can I speak to you about something technical or something more leadership orientated? So yeah, it's just picking the phone up and just going, listen, can we have a chat? And sometimes they're like, well, why do you want to talk to me? I'm like, because you're in a position now where you've got an understanding that I haven't got, and I need that to keep progressing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great position to be in. I find the same thing, like when I was a younger S&C coach, it was always looking up to people who'd been around longer than me or who were senior to me. But now, like you, it's looking to somebody who's got the expertise that I haven't got, whether they're 10 or 20 years younger than me or whether they're older than me. It doesn't make a difference. That's not the point. The point is, have they got that competency that I haven't got?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge in developing teams, particularly when you get to a certain age. You know, it's having that confidence to go, look, do you know what? Actually, I'm not bang up to date on this development in our world, but this person who's in their 20s has just come out and they've got all the fresh knowledge. So actually, can you sort of reverse mentor and you mentor me on this, and I'll bring other. That takes a lot of courage, and I think that's often a block for senior managers and senior leaders, is they don't want to be perceived as not being the font of all knowledge.
Yeah.
Actually, I think when you show a little bit of when you show some vulnerability with your support staff and team, that goes a long way, because then that's saying to them, okay, well, if Nick's happy to come to me for support, then I can go to him and I know he's going to be supportive.
Yeah, it's modeling that, isn't it? But it's also knowing that, if you bring in the best people, in the end, it's going to make you better, and you're going to do a better job. So, I just want to jump back and pick up on something else that you said when you were quoting that IKEA value about leadership isn't a position, it's an action. And I think you made some comment like maybe you haven't held some of the most senior leadership positions in sport or something like that. But there was something I wanted to comment on that, and that is that in your situation, it might not be a position, but you brought a lot of leadership in the field in terms of you've spoken at countless conferences and keynote speeches, so that's bringing thought leadership. You've written articles, that's bringing leadership, thought leadership. You've written book chapters and books. You've done podcasts. You've mentored people. For me, that's just as important and equally, if not more influential than being a performance director or a head of department, which, you've obviously done a lot of those senior leadership positions as well. But, it's the other things as well that bring that leadership in the field that, for me, stands out.
But you know what it's like, Pete, is you'll look either on LinkedIn or you'll look at your CV and you're reviewing it, and you might be applying for a senior leadership position, and you're like, actually, because I work for myself and I created this kind of portfolio career, actually none of these things say head of and director of, and I've not gone into an organisation and given myself that name. And on black and white on paper, sometimes people just look at the titles, whereas once I read that IKEA quote, I was like, hey, I can just relax, because it's about the doing. That's what real leadership is about, not the job title.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's maybe a challenge for people recruiting, that they need to look beyond titles, because there'll be people who've had the title who brought a lot less leadership.
Well, I know people that have led teams of one or two, and that's not really leading one or two. That's just giving yourself a job title by default.
Absolutely. So, what about sort of challenging moments that you've had then as a leader? Have you got any examples of real challenges when you've hit a brick wall or things have been tough?
I think I've not got like a specific incident, but I know what the things that I find really challenging are, and I'm getting better at, is knowing when to almost like tactically withdraw. So when you've tried a certain strategy and you've tried to influence and change, and you're not getting where you need to, it's accepting that, do you know what, it's okay to step back a little bit, take some time, consider a different approach. So that tactical withdrawal, so you're not giving up. It may be perceived by others that you've just given up, but I'm just going to sit in the background and let this one settle for a while. So again, I'm going to talk about Roz a lot because she's been really influential over the last 12 months. She said to me, the river's always flowing. So you can be stood in the same department, the same organisation, and the next day the river's flowing. There's been a change. So whilst you might be frustrated now, just stepping back and waiting, change will come. Someone will leave an organisation. There might be a change in roles. There might be someone might have an epiphany and go, do you know what, that is a really good idea. So it's just knowing when to step back and relax, and that's been really useful for me to speak to her as an external person not involved in sport, and just say, look, is this a battle worth having right now? And sometimes yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, Nick? Stick to your guns, keep going for it. And other times she's been like, do you know what? Why don't you just wait? and see what happens, because the river is always flowing. So that was one that I liked. And then
Sorry to interrupt, but that's a really good one, and for me, I find that tough because, it's knowing, like you said, it's not giving up, it's
yeah,
stepping back and waiting, and for me, it's like knowing when do I persevere and push and break that door down,
yeah,
and and be pig-headed about it, and when do I just step back, be patient, wait, maybe change tactic or strategy and whatever, and it's tough to know when to do that, isn't it?
it is. But I think we can draw on our experiences as coaches, and we know what to do when we've got athletes that are hitting plateaus. And
Yeah.
then same sort of mind. You see, when an athlete hits a plateau, we change things up. And when we're
Yeah.
hitting a plateau and not getting where we want with change management and a change process, well, we keep doing the same things not working. So we need to step back and reevaluate.
It's a lot easier to do it for an athlete though, because that's somebody else than when it's us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then I think that the second bit is what I experience in the more you learn about leadership, change management, different strategies, is it's dealing with the frustrations of when you're not seeing that within organisations and teams and departments. So people in those positions, and you might be thinking, do you know what? Actually, there's an alternative option that we could be looking at. So it's understanding that your level of knowledge and experience is growing maybe at a quicker rate than those around you that are in those decision making positions. So that's difficult when you don't hold the head of position to make the
Yeah.
final decision. Sometimes you have to sit and go, okay, I've got to wear this for now. This is not something I can influence.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've mentioned change management maybe 3 or 4 times already, and that already makes me know, right, Nick is bringing leadership because somebody who's wanting to change and move things forward and can see a better way is somebody who's bringing leadership. So it's just interesting that straight away just the way you talk shows that you've been in and are in situations where you're blazing ahead, you're trying to do things new things, do things in better ways, new ways, and so on, and that's really good to hear. I want to change direction a little bit and talk about maybe any models or frameworks or inspirations you've got. Now, these could be sort of a model that you've read in a book and you think, yeah, I really like that. Or this could be your own sort of rule of thumb that you've made up yourself that you think, right, I always use this ABC whenever I'm in this situation. Or you've talked about some of your inspirations already, but is there anything that you draw on or that you find really useful?
Well, Pete, I always like a quite strange analogy.
Yeah.
So I've got like a strange one to start with, and then I can think about some of the more sort of traditional sort of models. But the thing that I think about now that I presented first to the group at TAS when developing teams was that you can decide to be Batman or Alfred.
Yeah.
As a leader, I think there's two types. Some people want to be the superhero. They're going to come in, they're going to be called in, they're going to come in a blaze of glory, probably create a little bit of collateral damage and carnage, but they'll save the day and then they'll move on and away they go.
Yeah.
Or you can be Alfred, and Alfred is that person who's back at base, the trusted advisor, mentor, confidant that's keeping everything working, the process person. And my natural preference is more towards Alfred. I don't need to be at the photo shoot. I don't need to be front and center getting the glory. It's nice to get recognition, and that's at the most. That's what I like, is someone to say, "Do you know what? That was a job well done. Thanks for your support." So my natural preference would be to be Alfred, and not
I'm just laughing because I would just wonder what goes on in your brain sometimes when you're thinking out these things. But you know what? I'll never forget that now because it's just it's just so funny.
So I think it's not that one is good or one is bad. I think it's
Yeah,
that certain situations will certainly call for that troubleshooter to come in
yeah,
and turn around an organisation within sort of 90 days and then leave. But my whole thing is about creating legacy and developing, and I really want to see people and processes and systems and frameworks developing so that when I move on, you can look back and say it's in a better position than when I first got there. So that kind of anchors my thoughts. And then I think if we're going to more traditional, where people maybe a bit more comfortable than comic
mm,
books, then I think it's really about values-based leadership. That's I think where I sit nicely. So that's about authenticity. So being myself, making sure that what I do is aligned with the vision and mission of the organisation. There's a
Yeah.
consistency between what I say and what I do. So I think I'm really big on that to develop trust. There's the ethical aspect of it. So again, being honest, being fair, making principled decisions. There's a reason why we're making this decision. It's not just because I'm going to give you extra money because I can, or I'm going to take this work off you. There's a principle behind it. So that's about high trust. And again, we can talk about the trust quadrant and where you want people to be working, but I want high performers, high trust in that right-hand side. And then transformational, hopefully I am motivational and inspirational and saying, listen, this is where we want to go. Let's stand shoulder to shoulder. We've got shared values. This is how we want to be. It's not self-serving that I'm going to come in, do this, look amazing and then leave. This is about the bigger team. There is a bigger team at play than just me. And I think that links into Daniel Goleman's coaching approach to leadership, that long-term development, and then understanding the thing that's working for me more recently is this situational approach from Paul Hersey and Kenneth Blanchard. So different situations are going to call for a different style, and being able to flex and adapt your preferences. So sometimes you might have to be a bit Batman and come in, sort it out, and I've got to sort of play up to that side of me. And then other times you've got to dampen that down and be more of the Alfred and let's take a slower approach. So I think those are big things. And then obviously you've got things like SWOT analysis and VMOST and visions and mission creation, I think are really useful. We've gone through various iterations of that in organisations that I've worked with. And when done well and when done as a team, I think they can be really powerful to create that push, so that when you're in the day-to-day delivery, you can remember we all signed up to this. This is what we want to be pushing towards.
I mean, there's just so much there that you've rattled off, but I think it's interesting because you've spoken about a few different things that sometimes I feel leaders miss, because a lot of the time people think leadership is a function, so it's what you do, but you've spoken about both what you do and what you deliver, but also who you are. Yeah. And I think they're important, because what you do needs to flow from who you are. And you said one interesting thing that, and this lines up with the authenticity piece that you mentioned, and that is that, what I do needs to line up with what I say, and that's where trust comes in. And you talked about being principled and so on. And I think it's so important, because a lot of leaders just think about what they do, and they're not really thinking about that's got to actually stem from who you are, or it lacks that authenticity.
What I would say is they're not leaders, they're managers.
Yeah.
I would say that's management, that's technical management of the operational aspect of the job. It's getting the job done on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You're not leading and visioning where we're going to go over the next 3 to 5 years. I think people are just, it's a subtle difference, but important nonetheless.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean there's so much there, and we could go deep into any of it, but I want to move on a little bit, and maybe we'll come back to some of those things. But I want you to think about maybe some of the things that are unique to your style and your approach. I mean, you've touched on some of that already, but is there anything else that you can think about that you think maybe makes you stand out, or maybe is slightly different? I mean, obviously you're slightly, don't take this in the wrong way, but you're slightly quirky anyway, in the sense of your sense of humor and so on. But is there anything else that's kind of unique to you that you think you bring as a leader?
I think what I would say is that particularly through my roles when I was a consultant, it's that ability to onboard quickly. So onboard quickly.
Like onboard yourself quickly.
Yeah, onboard myself into a new organisation. So when I was working as a consultant, you would get parachuted in, and often with members of the team looking at you as, who is this person coming in? And I think I would onboard quickly, but in quite a subtle way. So not the Batman character coming in going, this is how we're going to do it, I'm the best. Much more of a, do you know what, I'm just going to spend some time seeing what's already going on, because there's already good practitioners and good work taking place. I've seen signs of perfection already, but how can we just dial this up a little bit? So let's do our normal thing and let's go in gradually. So I think onboarding, gaining trust is important, and again, articulating that we share the goals, that we're all after the same thing. I'm not coming here to better myself, I'm coming here to better the team or the organisation that I'm working with. I think what's unique is that I don't hold a head of position. So speaking to you on a leadership podcast, that, you know, the critic could say, well, yeah, but he doesn't lead anybody. But I think that is actually what's unique, is that my work is about influencing and the action. So that's why I like the IKEA thing. It's an action. It's not a job title.
And you know what, like, that's one of the definitions of leadership, is influence. Like, if you're not influencing, you're not leading, you know. So you might not hold the head of position, but there's people who have the head of position who potentially not influencing half as much as you are. So so definitely unique in that sense. I just want to dig a little bit deeper. So you talked about your ability to onboard quickly, so get parachuted in and kind of learn the ropes really quickly. Like, how do you do that? Like, what, like, if somebody's listening to this and go, yeah, well, it's all right saying that you can onboard yourself quickly, like, from a practical point of view, have you got any tips on how do you get your feet under the table so quickly?
So I think you have to show a real level of humility when you first come in. So it's not about beating your chest and talking about who you've worked with and where you've worked with. A lot of that digging will have been done by people already. They'll have already Googled you and linked in with you to see where so you don't need to, I don't need to come and tell you who I've worked with, and equally, like, that's not important, because this is a new situation. So there's humility that needs to come in. I think it's then leaning heavily on the experience of, there are certain things that I know work, there are systems and processes that are tried and tested, and let's spend a bit of time seeing which one of those would fit really well here. Let's take existing good practice and let's just dial that up by just making some of these tweaks and changes. So that's trying to develop that trust. And then one of the techniques that I learned from Professor Dave Collins, so Dave Collins asked me to go in and deliver a session in his place to a group of elite judo practitioners, and I'd never worked in judo before. I'd done martial arts myself, but never done judo. I was really nervous. I was a young practitioner, and Dave was this eminent professor in psychology and just an all-round amazing sort of chat. And he had the time to speak to me on the phone, and he just said, Nick, rather than just trying to bluff your way through it, just tell them at the start, listen, my name's Nick, I'm a sports scientist, I've got this background in these years, but I'm not an expert in judo. So what I want to do is spend the next 20 minutes understanding your sport. Tell me what your problems are, tell me what your challenges are, let me understand the world view from where you're at, and let me bring my view to it. And I think that's really important. I've always gone in and asked the simple questions of, what's the one or two things, big things that we're not doing that will have the biggest change? Let's not look for the 1%ers, marginal gains. That's a nonsense. What's the big thing that's being left on the table? I ask often when I go into sports that I've not worked in before. It gives me this ability to ask the silly question. Well, why do we do this training at this time? Well, because we've always done that. But why? So I can be the annoying person that always asks why, to dig and understand. And I think again, I love Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights. There's a chapter where he was talking about people having an argument, and they said, no, we're not arguing. We're just trying to understand each other's viewpoint. And again, that's really important. Is I'm not coming in here to show you that I'm better than you or that we're going to have an argument. It's just I want to understand your perspective, because we're all looking at the same world. We've all got the same world map in front of us, but we are looking at it from different vantage points, from different experiences, from different situations. And I need to come round and spend a bit of time looking from your viewpoint so that I can understand. And equally, the person that I'm onboarding with needs to understand where I'm coming from. Okay, I've been brought in as this technical expert. Here's what I'm going to bring. How can we add it to your system? So I've answered a question. I'm not sure if it's the one you wanted, Pete, but I think that's kind of how I would go about it slow and steady with humility and from a position of understanding rather than knowing.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I mean, you've referenced a lot of different people and books and resources throughout, the podcast so far. So I kind of want to touch on some of that stuff because earlier on when you were talking about values, so you talked about values-based leadership, you talked about authenticity, you talked about what you do being lined up with what you say, being principled, high trust and high performance and so on. How have you gone about kind of really developing your values and really understanding what your values are? Because strangely enough, some people don't even know what their values are, or do you know what I mean? They never even kind of take the time to think and reflect. So how have you really come to this level of self-awareness and what's really important to you?
I think probably more by luck than design, but I think it's so again really really great line in I think the script sing this song. It says if you won't stand for something, you'll fall for everything.
Yeah.
And I think throughout the career, I think there are points when you at a crossroads and you decide, well, am I gonna stand up for this, no matter what the outcome's going to be, good or bad, or am I just going to roll over and accept the paycheck or accept sloppy work? So I think over the course of 20 plus years work, there have been things that you get this feeling in your gut and you say, no, do you know what, this is not right. I'm going to stand up for this person in this situation. And then that forms, okay, that's what I believe is true. And then when I'm at an organisation and I think, do you know what, I'm not really enjoying it here. I'm getting paid really well, but this is not aligned with what I'm doing. It's taking me away from my family. It's taking me away from, I'm going to leave. That's financial suicide for me, but I'm going to do that because it's the right thing to do. And I've always kind of had that thing of like, can you sleep at night? And like, yes, you can take the big paycheck and you can, but actually, are you comfortable with that? Are my peers and friends and family looking, going, oh, you just sold out there? You just, so again, I don't know if I've answered it really articulately, but there's definite points where I can feel in my gut, this is right, this is wrong, this is what I'm going to do, and that forms the basis for my values, I think.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, I think one thing that's coming across is that you do make values-based decisions, so you're willing to kind of, give up the big paycheck if it doesn't sit right with you and where you're at and your family and so on, which is value-based decision making, which I think is important because some people hold certain values but they quite easily cross those values, or compromise those values for certain reasons.
Like for me, family's first and last in the decision making process, and there have been numerous situations where something looks really appealing and you get really excited and I just need to sense check this. I kind of know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask anyway. And it's the right answer that comes back of that might be great for you, or I can think I can go and work anywhere in any sport and it's brilliant because I'm working. But what about my family that I'm then dragging across the world, or I'm leaving at home? And there are certain times in your life where you can do certain things, but then there's others where you say, no, do you know what? For where we're at the moment, this is the best situation, and that's why I'm making this decision. So, that's I guess that's where I tend to sit on that.
Yeah, no, it's good and it's refreshing to hear, because it's important, and I feel very much the same in my situation with my family, and so I can really that it resonates with me in a big way. Just going back to kind of the question I was asking as well. So around, what have you done to kind of understand your values and so on, and you've had a number of influences. Like what do you do to kind of educate yourself? So obviously you're on a course at the moment, this level 7, but you've referenced a few books. So do you read a lot? Do you listen to podcasts? Like where do you absorb your information, and where do you really kind of do your own personal CPD?
I've got the reading speed of 1,000 snails, so I do try.
That's pretty quick then.
I try and read, but audio books tend to be my go-to. And when I was working as a consultant, I was on the road a lot, so I got through a lot of books. Um, so I do really enjoy reading around this area. The formal courses are really good, and they always point you to really good like TED Talks and so on. And then again, I've been fortunate to be asked to do again as part of maybe a podcast, a behavioural analysis. So they give you real good insight. So behaviour analysis at work, we've got that as well as a mindset. So mindset and behaviour gets evaluated. So you're starting to gain insights. A 360 review, super important. And then
So are these things you've introduced at work or stuff that was already set
a
up?
bit of either through my course or have been brought into the organisation,
Yeah.
and very much would like to champion. And then talking about championing, we have within the organisation we have a values champion group. So the organisation has its values, core values, and we have a working group, and I joined that working group to try and get myself out of the first team bubble and see other people within the organisation.
Yeah.
And that was really important to see how they connect and resonate with us, and are we aligned with the way that we work with the overall organisational values. So I think it's just as you get older, you just get more comfortable doing that type of stuff and showing a level of vulnerability. And then I read one of the best books I've read, Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. I could listen to her all day long, and her approach to leadership is very different to, it's really good, but uncomfortable for a lot of male-dominated sports, I would suggest, and performance areas, because it's about getting in touch with feelings and articulating that, and a lot of men don't like to do that in front of people. But
Yeah.
that's a great one for me, was Brené Brown stuff. And then I just like reading. I think another one that I looked at was the book Quiet by Susan Cain. So I am quite an internal, introverted person, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Dial it up, and I would always get a hard time for that, being the person that sat in the corner just watching and being quiet. And I read Susan's book, and it was like she was writing it to me and saying it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to like time on your own and go out on your mountain bike and not see someone for 4 hours. Like, that's my idea of a great day. Going out and not seeing anybody. Whereas it's my wife's absolute nightmare. She'd love to be talking to someone. So Susan Cain's book gave me permission to go, yeah, actually it's okay to be that, because I'm a thinker and a bit more logical, and I like time to process. That's how I like to work. So
Yeah.
again, I've not planned a curriculum and a structure. I've kind of just weaved my way through. One book leads to another book, leads to a TED talk, leads to a chat with a mentor. Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things that I have noticed, and I obviously, because I know you, and leaders come in different shapes and forms, and not every leader's the same. But a lot of people might think that you are super extroverted because when you present, you're very animated. You're engaging. You come across well. You're funny, and so on. But actually, behind that, you're quite introverted, and there's a lot of thought that goes in, and it's good for people to know that that even if you are fairly introverted, and you can still make a real impact, and kind of switch it on when you need to, and be that person in the room that can be really motivating and super inspirational when you need to, but you don't have to be like that all the time. And I speak to younger practitioners, and they're kind of still trying to find their feet with who they are and where they're at. They're like, am I really kind of this extrovert type person, or and there's kind of just really trying to find themselves and find their identity, and so it's really good to hear you say some of that stuff, because people will be able to go, oh yeah, actually I'm a bit like that.
I think one of the things that you learn is, so we like to label, you're an introvert, you're an extrovert.
Yeah.
One or the other. That's not the case. And the stuff that we've done with Mindflick through the Spotlight profile it's about preferences, and
Yeah.
context is the king. And what will happen is, when I'm going to go and give a keynote presentation, I will go to my sort of more external people facing, but that's going to take a lot of energy. I'm going to have to really dial that in and work hard at that. And then I'll probably just go and sit in the corner afterwards with a drink and just go, all right, I don't want to talk to anybody now. So you have all these skill sets. it's just you have a natural preference. I get my energy from being quiet and working alone. But that's not to say that I can't dial it up and stand in front of a squad of 25 athletes and get the session done with high energy. It's just we have preferences. It's not a label. I remember when I first started trying to give presentations and go to conferences, I saw these super clever boffins doing presentations with slide decks that were graphs and complex, and I was like, I started to try and talk like that, and I was terrible. And again, I saw Dave Collins came in and presented at the Basis conference, and he kind of spoke like me. He was a big hulking man mountain of a person, and the way he delivered, I was like, he sounds like me. He kind of makes this seem simple, and I kind of became unapologetically quirky with Batmans and Alfreds and cocktails and tequila and different ideas of what works for me. And not everyone likes it, but I'm comfortable with that because there's a lot of people that go, oh, that resonates with me. It's not going to appeal to the true academics who want that scientific rigor. I can give them that if they want afterwards, but I'm going to have a slide deck that looks very different to anybody else's.
Yeah, yeah. I've got to say, I can remember some of your slide decks from years ago and always been impressed by them. But no, it is interesting what you were saying about preferences, and you mentioned something else earlier about the ability to be agile and to flex. And I think this is the direction some of the the psychometric stuff has gone recently. In the past, it was very much you are, like you said, you are either introverted or extroverted, and it was very much about putting you inside a really tight box.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's more finding your preferences, how you operate and behave in certain situations, and how that might change under pressure or in a different context. And for me, that's much more helpful and healthier. And I, like you, I'm happiest, when I'm by myself. I'm chopping wood in the garden with my axe or something. And yeah, exactly. But people might see me present like you and think I'm this super like extroverted guy who wants to be with people all the time. Not at all. I like people sometimes, but not all the time. And so yeah, the ability to flex and adapt is important.
I think a lot of those early psychometric tests, and I went through loads of them, Myers-Briggs, and they became really dangerous because people went, that's such a blue thing to say. You're so blue. That's a typical blue response or a red response. And they, like you say, they labelled you. You're introverted, you're extroverted, you're blue, you're red. Whereas now, the more contemporary, science-backed, evidence-backed ones, you've got all of these qualities. You just, in certain situations, dial it up, dial it down.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything that you have seen in someone, in a person or a character or a leader that you really admire? Like, you've referenced some people who've made an impact on you. Like, what is it about them that you really admire? Or can you think of anything that you go, wow, that's really good. I want more of that, or that's really impactful.
I think with who was my first performance director at England Netball, she was a formidable character, okay, and still is a formidable character. So you'd be a little bit nervous when you were having one-to-ones with her, but she also had that human side, and she had that empathy as well. And apart from being a really good coach and a really good sort of technical director, performance director, she could also dial up that human side. And it's more recent years that you look back and reflect on that and go, yeah, do you know what? She saw something in a young S&C coach. She saw something that needed to be developed that maybe was not where he wanted to go, but managed to persuade him that was the right choice. When he made mistakes, yes, would be under no illusion that you'd made a mistake and that wasn't the way forward, but very quickly moved on. Let's go, come on, now we're on to the next thing. So, I think on reflection, those sorts of qualities, super useful. And again, I've had previous Mark Gillette, who been very influential in my career, very similar, a challenging person to work for and with, and not everybody's cup of tea. He's kind of a Marmite character. You would know if you'd made a mistake, but in the next moment, it's like, right, we've had that conversation. Come on, let's go get a cup of tea. It's done. And he had this ability not to dwell, and that probably comes from his years working in A&E situations like saving lives, where you've got to make very split-second decisions and then move on to the next thing. So I've always valued that with people that can pull you on something, but then move on. It's not personal. This is where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've noticed that as well, and I always think, the best leaders are the ones who can make the really tough calls or hard decisions. Sometimes be unpopular in the decision or the call that they have to make, but then be really caring and nice as well, and have a human side. Because some people, and I've experienced this, leaders are like, oh, I have to make the tough decisions. I have to make the hard calls. Therefore, I'm just going to be a really hard person, and just be difficult and just have a really tough, thick skin. And whereas you want to be like kind of thick on the outside and soft on the inside. Have a thick skin but really have a soft heart. And the best leaders I've worked with show those characteristics.
I know, again, the person that springs to mind is Chris Spice. So Chris was performance director at GB Basketball, and again, a tough character to work for. Very very demanding and wants work, but like uniquely flamboyant as well in his own certain way, and his playful side and his character. Sometimes you're sitting there going, is this the director of performance that we've got? But he knew how to be around people, but under no illusion, when it was work time, you need to be professional, you need to get the job done and hit these standards and these targets. So again, another interesting character to work with two very different skills. And I think what you're talking about is that idea, again, comes from, I think it's Kim Scott, Radical Candor.
Yeah.
So I was very good at giving direct and honest feedback. The bit that I was missing was the human side. So that logical, process orientated, these are the facts, good, bad, indifferent. Trying to get much more in tune with, actually I'm talking to a person here, and I need to get that. I can still be direct and challenging, but I need to have that human element. So that radical candor is really good from Kim Scott.
Yeah, that's good. Interesting, because I was probably the other way around. Really good on the human side. Struggled bringing the hard, straight message, but obviously had to work on that in positions I've had. But interesting that people come from different perspectives, but to really be have that whole set of skills and emotional intelligence and everything. You need to work on both sides of the coin, really.
When I completed my 360 review at the start of last season, went for a broad spectrum of people, direct reports, senior managers, direct line managers. And what was fascinating was there were qualities that some groups loved, and then the same quality other people saw as a real challenge, and he's being direct, and and that was again going, well, how can this lot like it, but this lot, and again, it's about their perception and the situation, and that really opened me up to this idea of, okay, what's my mindset? What's their mindset? How's my behaviour influencing that? How's stress influencing it? How's it influencing them? And me adapting goes right back to what Roz said. You need to change. You need to flex and adapt.
So interesting, the importance of us needing to change, us needing to adapt, and also needing to understand other people. It's all well and good understanding ourselves, which is important, and probably not enough people understand themselves, but you need to understand other people as well, and see their perspective, and kind of put yourself in their shoes to be able to lead them effectively.
100%.
What about the future? I mean, can you see, where do you think leadership in sports is going in the future, or can you see any trends or patterns, or have you got any practical insights or words of advice?
So I think there are a number of things. I hope we're going to start seeing people in leadership positions that have got leadership skills and experience and qualifications. I think what has traditionally happened in sport is you've had people that it's about promotion through profession. rather than actual skill sets. So you might
Yeah.
have really good technical practitioners, and the only way for them to go up through the hierarchy and to get the appropriate remuneration is to go into a management or a leadership position, when actually they might not have that skill set. If they
Yeah.
haven't got that skill set, one of two things: either recognise that and give them the training. And I don't mean just going on a director of sports qualification. Maybe think outside the box and look at leadership, general leadership skills from other organisations. And if they don't want to do that, let them stay as a really good technical practitioner, but reward them.
Yeah.
This idea, again, I saw recently of rock stars and superstars. So the superstars are the people that want to keep on going up and up and up. And they're the ones that always get rewarded, always get the plaudits. And we look at the rock stars that are just beavering away working as somehow being lazy and not dynamic and not ambitious. No, they are. They're just really good as a data scientist, or they're
Yeah.
really good as an S&C coach. And I've seen this when I worked at the IS, where I saw amazing track and field coaches that were the only way they could go up and be recognised was to become a regional manager. So you've got these men and women that are amazing coaches going into management positions, and you're losing all of this knowledge. And it's like, no, keep them on the track, but
Yeah.
reward them appropriately, because they are the best coaches. So I think that's one thing is don't just reward by profession. Make sure the people that are going to be into those leadership positions have the appropriate skill set and knowledge. The second thing I think is that within leadership, you've got these two speeds that need to be operating simultaneously, especially in high performance professional sport, more so than any other sport. So you've got what I call whistle to whistle practitioners. So they're the Saturday to Saturday, reactive, first loop thinkers. There's a problem, we fix it. There's a problem, we fix it. And you absolutely need those people. But what you need then is the podium to podium. So the 3 to 4 year Olympic cycle type mindset of, okay, maybe second, third loop thinking of, let's not just keep fixing the problem. Why are we getting that problem? And let's plan strategically over 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And those two speeds of operation need to run probably in tandem. What I think you tend to find is really good first loop thinkers, technical practitioners, whistle to whistle people that then find themselves in these strategic leadership positions going, but this is not what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Again, it's looking at your talent pool and understanding how you're going to balance and develop your workforce so that you can recognise, you know what, I'm going to keep you in this position because you're really good at this. This is your value. And actually, you're showing more of a strategic side, so we're going to pull you into this position here. So I think that's it, two different speeds. And then the final thing is this concept of sideways CPD. We were very fortunate to have Dave Brailsford. So Dave Brailsford came in and did a presentation to us a number of years ago. And it was something that I always believed in anyway, coming from Olympic sports. But working in football was very insular and blinkered. You only
Yeah.
know football. It's like, because there's no other sports, right? And I came from Olympic sports saying, well, I learned from all different places. And so Dave Brailsford said, it's about looking sideways. So we created our sideways CPD program. And yes, we bring practitioners in from sport, but we bring them in from industry, from technology, from the performing arts. But we also bring in sprint coaches. But we don't just go, let's get the football sprint coach, or let's get the football. We try and avoid that. We go and spend time with Formula One teams. We had someone that came in and spoke to us about setting up a COVID testing centre and how the systems and the processes to do that. So I think the big challenge in high performance sport is to look outside of sport. Look at big business, military, healthcare. What are they doing really well in those industries? And what are the transferable skills that we can bring in? And that's why when I looked for a leadership qualification, I did have a look at some of the more obvious routes of sporting director qualifications and
Yeah.
sports related ones. But I was just like, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to learn more by doing a non-related, just strategic leadership. And on my cohort, we've got people from finance, from sport, we've got people from football, but from all different industries. And the conversations with people in finance or marketing or performing arts, that's where you get the real insight. And you go, actually, that's a similar problem that I face in football, it just looks a little bit different here. So that sideways CPD is something I think that's really important.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. I mean, you brought so much content in this podcast. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it, but there's been some real gems in there. So really appreciate your time, Nick. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, or like what do you? Is there anything that you're up to that you want to talk about, or a newsletter you want to plug, or a book you've just written, or tell us what you're doing that outside of your day job that's interesting.
No, you can go on my Instagram and look at the silly challenges that I've done, or when the team's doing really well and I'm being a fan. I've got nickgrantham.com. You can always go over to there and have a look, and there's resources and information on there. I think the one thing that I'm looking at in really interested is this sort of space and this mindset behaviour, the evaluation of that, and how that actually feeds into your leadership. So I think that's something that I'm going to be looking at over the next 12 months externally, out of just interest, because I love coaching. I really love coaching athletes and working with athletes, but equally coaching you or a young S&C coach and mentoring to make them better is just as rewarding. So, my company 0226 is about realise your potential. Strapline, and that's it. Doesn't matter who it is. I just like to help people become better versions, as I kind of do to myself.
Brilliant. No, that's fantastic. Well, look, really appreciate your time. I've learnt so much off you over the years, of spending time with you, and it's just an absolute honour to have you on the show. And you really are a leader in our field, and I really appreciate everything that you brought and everything that you're doing. So thanks so much for your time, Nick. I know you're a busy guy, but appreciate you carving out some time to speak to us.
No, absolutely. As soon as you reached out, I was a definite yes straight away. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. Look after yourself. Cheers.